Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's episode on the Malaysian YouTube video series. And today I'm going to talk about the high-speed rail. Now, why I'm talking about this topic today is because there is some new news to share. Typically, the first thing I want to talk about high-speed rail is that people always confuse high-speed rail with the RTS. The high-speed rail and the RTS, right, are actually two different projects, right? The RTS is the MRT from Woodlands into JB City Centre, whereas the high-speed rail is actually a very, very fast train, right, that goes from Jurong East to Iskandar Puteri in the west and all the way to Kuala Lumpur, right? So it's two different projects altogether. That's the first thing I want to get out of the way. So I think there is some interest for you to pay attention to the high-speed rail because there may be some very big developments coming up later this year. Okay, but before we start all that, I think a very interesting article came out on the Singapore Straits Times on Monday, 25th of March. Basically, an opinion article saying that why Johor can be the next Shenzhen of Southeast Asia, right? Now, this is always done because there's a lot of comparisons between Shenzhen, Hong Kong to Johor, Singapore, right? Because we are very similar thing, right? With one very advanced, high-cost, high-income city, Hong Kong, Singapore, with another low-cost, large land, big workforce on top, which is Shenzhen and Johor Bahru. So this comparison is always done quite a fair bit. If you ask me, of course, Shenzhen, Hong Kong is very successful, right? Johor Bahru and Singapore are less so. So the potential between Johor Bahru and Singapore has not been fully explored. Now, part of this is the reasons that we talk about a lot, like basically the political instability in Malaysia in the past few years. But I think we are at a point again where a lot of the stars are aligned, where this thing is being talked about again, right? Most importantly, there's a special economic zone being discussed, which will be announced later this year, around September, October. There is also the RTS being constructed, which will be completed 2 years from now. Sultan of Johor is Agong. There are a lot of things in line, right? We can call it Bazi, Feng Shui, whatever, right? That's making this thing looks like Johor is going to be a very hot place in the years to come. So, but yeah, let's go back to the main topic, which is the high-speed rail, and I'll show you how this links back to all of this Shenzhen story later. So number one, what is the high-speed rail? So the high-speed rail is like what you see in China, in Japan, in Europe, right? Like the Japan Shinkansen, right? I'm sure many of you have probably seen that before. The Shinkansen, a very, very fast train that goes typically at speeds of more than 300 kilometers per hour, right? So it's a very, very fast train, right? And basically we're going to build one of these, and the long-term plan is to have actually all this rail connected all the way to China, right? So if you notice, Thailand is already building part of it in Thailand. Indonesia already has one from Jakarta to Bandung. So this is the one where we're trying to build between Singapore to KL. So the high-speed rail between KL and Singapore comes with two different services. The first one is the direct service, right? When we say direct means Jurong East to KL, vice versa, direct, no stops, right? So this one takes 90 minutes end to end, right? So the train will travel more than 300 km per hour, right? And so this is the fast one, right? So the next service is basically the stops at the cities along the way. So there are a few cities along the track, which is basically Iskandar Puteri. Iskandar Puteri is actually Gelang Patah area just off the Tuas second link, right? You have Batu Pahat, Muar, Aikaro, Seremban, and Putrajaya. So if you take the second service, which is the one that stops along the way, right, of course it'll take a much longer time to get to KL, right? But there's also this service as well. So why is the high-speed rail so what is the reason for it, right? So basically, if you notice, the KL-Singapore route today, the flight route, right? If you take a flight, is the busiest or among the busiest routes in the world today, right? Similar to the Johor, Singapore Causeway crossing, right? The flights between KL and Singapore, there are lots and lots of flights. One of the most profitable flights for airlines to fly. So if you go try and book a flight today, you'll notice that there are actually, I think in a day, 20, 30 flights if you add all in all the different airlines, if I'm not wrong. So a lot of travel goes on between KL and Singapore. So demand is definitely there. So by building a high-speed rail, we intend to stimulate more demand, right? And especially also it'll be beneficial to the cities, in the small cities on the Malaysia West Coast that go up all the way along the way of the track, right? For tourism, for business as well. Okay, and of course, Singapore and Malaysia are very huge trading partners, and both governments hope to have a win-win situation where more business and talent travel across both borders, right, to take advantage of the short travel time. If you use Hong Kong example, traditionally in the early 2000s, right, you could only take a MRT from Hong Kong to Shenzhen, and that would take you maybe 45 minutes, right, from Hong Kong Central. Now you can take a high-speed rail, right, from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, right, which should traditionally take you a few hours to get to Guangzhou. Now you can go to Guangzhou in 45 minutes. So Guangzhou and Hong Kong have become a lot more closer, right, and so a lot more business and trade is being done just because the travel time is a lot less, right. Expansion for business, etc., becomes easier, right. Hiring people because it's become a lot closer and more feasible for people to work, right, because of the close distance. So let's go into it again. Where does the high-speed rail KL Singapore goes to, right? So back in 2012, I think this article came out in the Straits Times. It made everyone excited because it was on the front page of Straits Times, right? And basically the Singapore and Malaysian government agreed to do a high-speed rail KL to Singapore in 90 minutes. So as I mentioned earlier, the Singapore station is in Jurong, right? Jurong East, right, to be specific. Basically near where the Genting Hotel is. If you know where the Genting Hotel is, the land at the back, right, that's where the station will be, right? I think most of you have probably read the papers that recently there's a consortium of 5 developers have also bid to develop the entire Jurong Lake district, right? So the high-speed rail land has been set aside, will be part of that as well, right? So yeah, so the train is there. The Singapore government was actually quite serious about it. In 2015, they acquired the Jurong Country Club. In 2017, they acquired the Raffles Country Club, right, for the golf. So they take away this golf course because they needed the land to build the high-speed rail. Now, in case you're wondering who pays for the high-speed rail cost, right, basically the idea was civil works in Singapore paid by Singapore, civil works in Malaysia paid by Malaysia. So although you may argue that the track in Malaysia is a lot longer, but it will all be borne by Malaysia, all the track in Singapore will be borne by Singapore. But actually Singapore's track is, a lot of it's underground, so actually the cost may be roughly the same. The only thing, the cost that they share is actually the train track. Not train track, the train system, right, the rolling track, right, that means the trains, all that. That one is a shared, I think 50-50 based on the previous agreement, right. So only the civil works, right, the hard stuff on the ground in your own country, you pay for your own, okay. So that's how the cost structure works, right. So if you look at the station location, and the alignment will pretty much be the same, right. So Jurong East is here, right. I show you where Jurong East today, behind Genting Hotel in Jurong East, right? If you look at the station in Iskandar Putri, basically the station is off a project called, a township development called Aspira, right? If you know where Aspira is, near Leisure Farm, Aspira, roughly in that area. But if you go today, you can't really see the actual site lah. There's no hoarding, it's just a big plot of plantation land, so you can't really tell, but it's generally in this vicinity, right? I will skip the other stations, but the other important station to look out for is the KL station. Now, the KL station is in a place called Bandar Malaysia. Now, Bandar Malaysia is a former military airbase, right? So something like Paya Lebar airbase, right? So 500 acres, quite prime land in the city, Sungai Besi, right? So it's actually considered quite prime land in the city today. It's very difficult to get 500 acres in KL, prime KL today. So that's why this Bandar Malaysia land is so valuable. So the station will be there and will be connected to the MRT network in KL. And here we have some concept photos of how the stations would look like, right? All very fancy, right? We don't know whether the stations will still look like this, right? They'll probably be changed, right? But yeah. So what happened was that, in case you're wondering why I'm talking in past tense, right? It's because, yeah, so the Malaysian governments agreed to do this in 2012, 2013, said they will build this high-speed rail. A bilateral agreement was signed, if I'm not wrong, is 2018. But what happened, of course, was the unfortunate incident where the Malaysian elections happened in May 2018, and Prime Minister Najib Razak of Malaysia lost the elections and he was removed from power. It was the first time the government changed in Malaysia. So when the government changed, the new Prime Minister was Mahathir Mohamad, and you know Mahathir Mohamad, he tried to be anti-corruption, all that, right? So a lot of mega projects were postponed, right, including the high-speed rail, and because they were trying to find elements of corruption, and eventually the high-speed rail project was cancelled by another Prime Minister later in 2021. And because of all these delays, the Malaysian government actually paid a compensation to the Singapore government of roughly 100 million Singapore dollars, right? Because the Singapore government already spent so much time, effort to prepare, and suddenly you cancel, so they so they had to pay compensation. But funnily enough, about a year plus later, another Prime Minister in Malaysia said that he wanted to bring back the high-speed rail. And actually, a lot of the business community and the political community in Malaysia want to do the high-speed rail project, right? I think the important thing actually is the cost. So the new proposal by Malaysia actually is to build the high-speed rail, but they don't want the government to pay for it. Okay, so they want it to be privately funded now, which is usually unusual, right? Because rail projects are definitely very high quantum, big projects, right? And normally governments have to get involved, right? Because it's a lot of money, right? So, but in Malaysia's case, they're trying to get a private company to build it, right? So that's the new proposal. And actually the HSR Corporation, right, the agency in charge of the high-speed rail in Malaysia, they received 7 proposals in January of this year, 2024, on how to do this high-speed rail without the Malaysian government paying for it. So, and I think they've shortlisted 3 in the latest news article here. So, and if you see in this latest news article, the basically one of the guys that would do it is actually there'll be funding from China. So as you know, China still has this one belt, one road. I don't know how many of you still remember this, the one belt, one road concept, where China trying to help the countries around the world to industrialize. So very likely this proposal will have funding from a Chinese bank, right, to be able to do this as part of the one belt, one road policy. So if we do hear of the high-speed rail coming back later this year, right, probably very near to the special economic zone announcements, right, and I think later this year you may find that Johor is a very exciting place because of special economic zone, plus the high-speed rail story come back. So the high-speed rail story comes back. Next thing the Malaysian government will do is submit this proposal to Singapore, see whether Singapore's okay with it. I don't think Singapore will say no. I mean, in all likelihood, Singapore will say yes. I mean, they already prepared it for such a long time. And Singapore, if they want to do high-speed rail, there's only one way, which is up through KL. So I don't see why Singapore will say no, right? So if the high-speed rail comes back, I think this will be a very, very exciting story for Johor, right? Plus the other things which I mentioned earlier, the Sultan of Johor being the Agong, right? He definitely wants this thing to happen. Some of you like to point out, will the high-speed rail pass by Forest City? Actually, I don't think it will. The high-speed rail station will still be in Iskandar Puteri, my opinion, very high, like 90%. But last time what Forest City proposed was that they want to have their own, branch out one LRT station, right, that goes from the high-speed rail station to Forest City. That was what they were requesting. So I don't know whether that will still happen, right? But that was what Forest City proposed last time. So I don't foresee a change in alignment. The high-speed rail will not stop in Forest City directly, although it would not be too far away. It's roughly 20 minutes drive, right, from Forest City, right? So yeah, that to answer the question about Forest City and the high-speed rail. So who are the biggest benefits of the high-speed rail coming back? Now, number one, I think effectively why this is a big plus to Johor is because this is going to be the second rail link between JB and Singapore, right? Today the RTS is the first rail link, right? And it already generated so much property demand in the JB city centre. So if you have a second rail link, although this time is Jurong East to Iskandar Puteri, but a second rail link, right, you will see that part of Iskandar Puteri boom as well. So rents will go up, prices will go up, definitely for sure, in anticipation of this high-speed rail. Right? So places like Puteri Harbour, Madini, Leisure Farm, East Ladang, Bukit Indah, Eco Botanic, which all of these projects which are generally 15 minutes drive distance to the high-speed rail, all of this will benefit. Of course, the nearer you are to the high-speed rail, the better, right? That's for sure, right? But generally in speaking, because Iskandar Puteri is a very greenfield area, so if you look at existing projects, these are the ones that are nearest today. So this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about all the stars being aligned, right? So if you think about 2024 as a year for Johor, right? You have the RTS coming in 2026. Later, and as the RTS construction progresses, right, even more photos of the construction progress appear. People get more and more confident in Johor, right? The next thing, of course, is the special economic zone, which is happening later this year, September, October. We don't know what will happen. QR code travel, think passport free, more visas. These are all tax incentives. These are all things along the way in the special economic zone. The other thing that will excite us, of course, is the high-speed rail, right? The high-speed rail will be pushed very, very heavily by the Agong, who is the Sultan of Johor. So that's what I mean, right? A lot of things are start aligning. Malaysia and Singapore government relations are a lot better now than a few years ago under different prime ministers in the past, right? The Malaysian government's a lot more stable. So there's a lot of reasons to be positive for Johor later this year, and especially for the next few years. I think easily we're entering a phase where Johor will boom easily for the next 5-10 years. I think that's for sure, as all these benefits slowly kick in and seep in, right, into the Johor market. Thank you very much. I hope that was useful for you. There will definitely be more high-speed rail videos as we go along later this year, as we get more and more information from the high-speed rail, Haishisa Corporation, and both governments as they release more information to us. But I think this is the first video I'm going to do about high-speed rail for this year to keep you guys updated on where we are today and what has happened in the past and what will likely happen moving forward, right? So if you found this video useful, thank you very much. I hope you will click like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You guys comments are always encouraging to me. If you feel you have any question or something I left out or said wrongly, please leave it in the comments below. I will do my best to answer you and get back to you as soon as possible, right? Thank you very much. I'm also a property agent in Johor Bahru. If any questions about buying property in Iskandar Puteri, what you think are good buys in Iskandar Puteri, maybe I'll do that video next. Do contact me and we can have a chat about what possibilities there. So thank you very much and bye-bye.